been a while since I've done one of these, and let's be honest here, I'm way too rusty at this to try to maintain some semblance of my usual articulation vernacular, but far be it for me to miss an opportunity to uphold my I am no longer going to say that I'm not good enough to do anything mentality that I had at the beginning of the year, and I finally managed to get my computer in a working order, at least for now, so God knows if these videos are going to actually continue like I had planned on continuing them back in January. Shot myself in the foot on that one, but fate hates me, and what you gonna do? Anyway, here we are, and the conversation I have is relatively simple, and it's, as I assume many of you are aware that are even going to listen to this, is going to be contained solely to the United States because I live in the United States, and, well, frankly, I don't have any purview outside of the United States, in particular, when it comes to this particular topic. So, without further ado, I'm going to jump right into this more or less a pseudo off-the-cuff kind of video without the usual flair that I'm going to put into it because, well, frankly, my files are an entirely desolate mess right now, and I don't know where any of my shit is. So I'm just going to record the audio and work from there. But anyway, without further ado. Now, the coronavirus is, excuse me, I'm not even supposed to say coronavirus. The beer virus, the Spanish flu 2, or Spanish flu Lite, really. It's Walmart brand Spanish flu, basically, is what it is. That was supposedly supposed to kill millions of people. Although, given now, at this particular point in time, I believe the survival rate, as more and more people realize that they have had it and survived it, and didn't even realize they had it to begin with, because it's a fucking virus, and viruses have the ability to mutate and have multiple strains, something that somehow humanity has forgotten. But a person is smart, people are dumb, panicky creatures, and we are aware of this. You know, sheep will be sheep, and they will follow the leader of the pack to their inevitable demise. Even though the cliff is clearly there, they go anyway. But it's become abundantly clear throughout this entire situation that there are a certain group of people that you just have revealed themselves that you just can't trust them. These are the kinds of people we are aware of these kinds of people, especially if you are a libertarian such as myself, that will continue to accept the government taking more and more and chipping away at the foundation that is the mountain of your rights. At this point, it's not even a mountain anymore. It's a goddamn molehill. But that's the topic for another time. They chip away at these rights over and over and over again and take just enough away that they can get a large enough of a group of people to agree with them that it's for the greater good. Now, this applies specifically to the coronavirus, and also it applies in general. But I want to talk about the coronavirus in general because it has been abundantly clear and opened my eyes to the just vast amount of people that have no issue whatsoever being forced into their homes against, not even against their will, because they do it willingly. They want to force other people into their homes under the guise of their own safety. That is the pinnacle of the issue, though, because a lot of these people think that by forcing other people, their will on other people, they're helping them, when in all actuality, all they're doing is inciting violence through the actions of the police, and the police are armed individuals that are enacting the will of a government that you may or may not agree with. But that's just the way that it is, and we're all aware of the quote-unquote Karen trope, and you know, I prefer the Carl for the male version of this, but it's not a male or female issue. It's not an issue that is attributed to solely arbitrary measures of gender or sexual preference or skin color to root out all the identitarians. It's simply a matter of people that clutch for their pearls and think that they have the moral power to invoke upon their neighbors the will and actions that they think are necessary for that individual. So they live vicariously through these people and think that, all right, for their greater good, I'm going to rat on these people. A man with a fucking pistol is going to come and either, well, you don't have to be a man, it could be a woman too. A person is going to come with a pistol, or is going to either imprison them against their will, which is, let's face it, that's fucking kidnapping, or is going to write them a citation and they are going to be fined. So this individual is saying that because you choose to take your own safety into consideration and decide that, well, I'm not as concerned about my safety as you may be, I'm going to leave my house and go to the park and actually enjoy the nice weather now that things are actually finally starting to get warmer here in the north. And don't get me wrong on that. People have been wary about putting their fucking plants in. The temperature has been so sporadic up here in upstate New York. But that's besides the point. The reality of the situation is that if you choose to go outside, the choice is yours. You are an individual. You are free to make that choice. So you accept the consequences of the fact that you left your front door every goddamn day. And that's what these people don't understand. All of a sudden this virus comes along and a bunch of people in suits and ties tell you that, well, you better stay inside or you're going to kill your neighbor because you might get them sick. Well, here's a reality for you, moron. It's fucking flu season. You go and visit your grandmother in the goddamn hospital right now, you might be carrying the flu. There's a good chance you might kill her. I'm sorry. That's just the fact of the matter. That's the fact of human life. That's a fact of not even human life, life in general. It's eventually going to end. Maybe against your will. It may be through your own will if you commit your own suicide. Most people die outside of their own will. It sucks. It's a reality of life. It's a reality of life that you have to fucking face at some point in your life and become an adult. Now, don't get me wrong. If you are seriously concerned about this disease, go ahead. Feel free to stay home. I'm not going to hold that against you. If you're scared, if you're paranoid, stay home. There's literally nothing stopping you from doing that. Aside from the fact that you need money. That might be something that I might be able to give some people a little leeway on because most people aren't very good at budgeting their money. And quite frankly, neither is the government, but that's besides the point. Now, through all of this, you noticed a increase in the amount of propaganda rhetoric. What I'm talking about is idolizing nurses and doctors. And that's not to, no, don't get me wrong. Don't use the paradigm on this where you're either all for it or all against it. I have no issue whatsoever with nurses and doctors, and I understand their importance to us as a society. However, they're still just human beings, and don't get me wrong, I don't want them to die either. But they seem to be taken from their traditional sense that a doctor is a caretaker, nurses are caretakers, and they mean then be put on the top of this pedestal, and you see this propaganda artwork all over the place. It looks like a goddamn page out of 1984. Not literally a page out of 1984, but something you would imagine when you read 1984 and even when you see old communist propaganda, it seems to mirror it in almost a certain kind of way. And that's not the only propaganda. You hear these ads. I've been getting them a lot on YouTube for like, you better accept that we've all been learning to cope with the new normal, the new normal, and flatten the curve, and we stay home so they stay safe, and it's infuriating to me because it almost seems like they want to paint this to the people like this is something that you have to accept for an extended period of time, far past the goalposts that they had already set with the flatten the curve, which, by the way, has happened. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink quick. But, so now the curve is flattened, and the whole point of the flattening the curve was to make sure that our medical apparatuses didn't get overwhelmed with new cases. And now you see that certain people in the medical field are being furloughed. Now, it doesn't take a person with a great understanding of economics to understand that when people start getting laid off from a particular field of business, the reason why they're getting laid off or furloughed isn't because there's a high demand for that particular service. It's because the demand is low and there's no need for them to be there. Now, the concept of keeping people to understand this is the new normal is to go down the realm of tinfoil hat and speculation. Is to get people used to this concept, to get used to the concept that every time that there's a crisis, that these are things that they're going to have to accept. No congregating and and protesting your congressmen, your governors, your mayors, etc., your leaders, essentially. There is no congregating to protest these people, essentially abolish that section of the First Amendment just because we are in a crisis at any time the people in power seem fit, because they've already set the precedent to do this. All they have to do is reignite the same flames over and over and over again, and the bonfire grows to the bonfire it has now, where we have a whole group of people that have no issue whatsoever ratting on their fucking neighbors just because the man in the suit and tie told them that doing this was bad. Now, segueing from that particular topic to the politicians pining for more power, and you see this in the bills that they put through during this entire crisis. Yeah, there might be things like people are getting money for being laid off. There are a certain amount of your money that's getting you in the form of this. They have been known to be called Trump bucks, which is essentially just a forwarding of your tax income for next year. But that's a topic for another time. So you have these things on the bare surface don't seem like that bad of an idea unless you understand how government works, and we'll get into that in a second. So on the surface, it doesn't seem bad. Most people would look at it and be like, yeah, I can understand that. But what they don't, they're essentially a used car salesman who gives the car a nice, good clean, goes through. Maybe in the olden days, they throw a little sawdust in with the oil to calm the sound of that knock, just enough that you won't notice it for the first, 50, 75 miles that you drive, and then all of a sudden the engine sounds like it's about to fall apart. That analogy aside, when you go into when you scrape away the surface, you actually got into the meat and potatoes of this kind of stuff, you realize that a lot of these bills, it's fat, it's pork, it's $75 million to here, $150 million to there, $1 billion to here. We want to increase the size of this particular segment of the government. We want to furlough, we want to swipe aside all rent, and if eventually that property comes up condemned, we want to be able to go in there as a government agency and take over that property. Now, if you think about it on the core level, well, they want to slow down rent. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, after all, the economy being crashed, people can't afford rent anymore. I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But then you get into the draconian law part of it, and then you realize that at any point in time, these politicians and the government can come in and take any individual's, or essentially take any individual's property away from them, completely denoting the concept of property rights and destroying that in the name of a pandemic which, by the way, a lot of these people are out of work because of that same government. It's a fucking self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a self-feeding cycle. That's usually how government works. Because in order for the general populace to be sold the idea that in order for the problem that was created by government in the first place to be fixed, they have to believe that in order for that problem to be fixed, the only way to fix the problem is to give the original perpetrator of the issue more fucking power, which, when you boil it down to that, most people see the logical fallacies in the concepts, and they tend to be like, well, I never necessarily thought about it that way. Well, of course you did, because you've been perpetually told that the government can do no wrong, and this is the entity that has no issues, can do nothing wrong, is the conducive collective mind of the individuals of society, when in fact they are the individuals themselves with their own agendas, their own drives, and their own desires and greeds. But that's just the way that's just the nature of the beast, and we're all well aware of that. And this is also apparent in the political infighting. You have politicians that'll go after a politician for doing the exact same fucking thing only because they happen to fall on the other side of the aisle. Now, this is a topic that I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on in general, but you see this with like the hydroxychloroquine thing that was really, really loud and obnoxious in the media for a short period of time until, actual studies came through that, it's not a cure, but it does actually help treat the condition in and of itself, Spanish Flu Lite. And it wasn't necessarily this as inducive to them to maintain the concept that just because Trump had mentioned it, that it is necessarily evil. And when Trump originally, mentioned it, this is a while back at this point, so my memory is a little hazy on the subject, but he originally mentioned it in some form of press release or something, and immediately the media was all over it. Democratic people were all over it. They were calling him, essentially they were saying that this is non-science, it's non-medical, and people are going to kill themselves, despite the fact that hydroxychloroquine is essentially a treatment for malaria, is cheap, is widely available, and has been used for an extended period of time. Despite all these things being known, they treated it like Trump was a fucking voodoo doctor and you shouldn't trust him. Not to say that you should trust him, but the irony of the subject is what I'm going at, considering how Democrats are usually the first ones to call Republicans the science deniers, but that's a whole other fucking mess of worms for another day. But despite all this political infighting, the draconian laws, the authoritarian overreach, the continued acceptance of the destruction of natural rights and property rights, and the Karens and Carls of the world, we find ourselves in essentially what is an economic collapse. Because, well, let's face it here, you have a massive part of the population, I think somewhere around 23, 24 million people right now that are unemployed. 23, 24 million people is a massive part of the workforce that is no longer working. Yes, sure, some of them are making unemployment with the dividend of the coronavirus being added in on top of that. But people have to realize that this can only be sustained for so long. And, of course, you'll have the people say, well, the federal government, can't they just print more money? And then the only thing I have to say to that is Germany, pre-World War II, look it up. Okay? I would go through it, but I feel like I'd be beating my head against the wall if somebody asked me that question unironically. But the economic collapse is pushed by the government, is being forced onto the people by the government. The government is the one that's telling you that you can't go to a restaurant. You can't go to the movie theater. You can't go to a bar, because congregating and making your own life choices and deciding for yourself as an individual to take your own life's risks, which, by the way, you do every time you leave the door anyway. Let's be honest here. Every time you leave the door, you don't know. You might walk out your front door, you walk across the road, you get ran over by a car that was driven by a drunk driver who happened to be high on cocaine that he bought from your fucking neighbor. All right? Life is full of risks. But that tangent aside, this entire economic collapse has been pushed and populated by the government. Okay? That's just a fact. So this economic collapse is going to lead to an inevitability where food becomes incredibly scarce. And you already saw this after the initial, well, maybe not you as an individual listening to this, but I know I have. You go into certain stores now and you notice that certain things have become less and less, not necessarily the shelves are empty, but they are becoming less and less common. And this even goes into such things as governors banning the sale of seeds, which they didn't just have the stores remove the seeds from the shelves altogether, which doesn't make any sense, because even that doesn't make any sense, because if the person is already in the store, haven't they already subjected them to the concept of contracting the virus anyway? I mean, I guess I kind of understand I kind of say kind of understand. I'm trying to play the devil's advocate here. Bear with me. I kind of understand the concept of removing the option of buying seeds to dissuade people from actually going to the store altogether, but this is entirely trumped by the fact that you sell relatively common items such as toilet paper anyway, and I don't know very many people that would just go to the store, especially big box stores like Walmart, just to buy seeds. But you also have trumped it in the fact that seeds could be viewed as necessary because it's essentially the starting of food. So that, to me, in of itself, was a clear indication of the way that the draconian laws have started to become a knee-jerk reaction to the Spanish Flu Lite. So, with all of this going on, and now you have, issues with farming and food shortages that are eventually going to start happening. You have the UN warning of mass starvation that's going to cause millions of deaths, way more than the virus itself even would have fucking caused. So all of these people that are saying that, oh, if you want to leave the house and you want grandma to die, all you gotta do is look them in the face. I was like, I want to go to work so that I can produce, so that other people don't starve to death. I'm sorry, but would you rather millions of people died, or would you rather one grandmother died? That's a real tough conversation for somebody to have, especially somebody that starts espousing some stupidity as though you want to leave the house, you want grandma to die. But anyway, people that spout that shit are freaking stupid to begin with, and that's just the way that it is. Anyway, I feel like I've ranted more than long enough. It's approaching 21 minutes now. Like I said, I don't know how this video is going to turn out. I'm going to try to put sources and tidbits into it and see what I can do. But it might not necessarily work out the way that I want. Like I said, I just got my computer up and running, and I still have to find all of my shit, and that includes Vegas Pro and all of my image files and all of my audio files. Ain't that a bitch? Anyway, I don't know when this is going to come out, but I hope to see you come to the next one. Give me a week or two or more. You never know. I'm like herpes. I may go away for a while, but I always come back.